this project has stalled. There's only a tiny commitment from the state government. The Greens are committing $100 million to stage one of this project federally, and the way to achieve that is to ensure that we get Dawn elected and put the Greens in a position of multi-party government should we have a close election. We only need to look at what Rob Oakeshott achieved at Port Macquarie in his position under the multi-party government arrangement of 2010 to see the big investment that came to Port Macquarie through its hospital, and know how effective having someone like Dawn in the Parliament in a power sharing arrangement can be. So we are committing an extra $100 million spend to the Tweed Hospital for services like cancer services, MRI services, to improve theatre capacity in this building. So we are very, very committed to seeing expansion of the Tweed Hospital so that it can meet the needs of the local community. And at the moment, under the state and federal Liberal governments, it's just not achieving that.
You met with the doctors today. What concerns did they raise with you about the state of the hospital?
Well, for example, when it comes to cancer care, a woman with breast cancer needs to drive up the road, have preliminary procedures done that are invasive, can sometimes have to drive back to the hospital with a wire hanging out of an incision because they don't have the capacity to do that here. You've got people who need to access cancer treatment who are being seen in the hospital for their initial care and then have to drive for, is it a couple of hours to Lismore?
Well, a difficult drive.
A difficult drive to Lismore to have further follow-up when it comes to cancer treatment. Imagine, an elderly person with serious cancer who can't get the treatment they need here locally because it's not being funded by Labor or Liberal governments, needing to visit a hospital and undertake what's a very difficult drive at the best of circumstances. So they're just some of the stories. The fact that you've got a hospital that does, when it comes to its theatre cases, 50% of what we see in here is emergency care, and that's very unusual when you look at what other hospitals do. A much lower proportion of what they do is emergency treatment, and they're able to do a lot more elective treatment. But because they don't have the capacity in their operating theatres, a lot of people who need elective care, it might be something like a joint replacement, can't be done here, or at least they have to go onto a long waiting list because they haven't got the capacity within their operating theatres. They also told us that for many people they can't even go onto the waiting list. There's a waiting list to go onto the waiting list, what's sometimes called the hidden waiting list, because of the fact that the theatre just doesn't have enough capacity to do the procedures that it needs to do.
You've seen hospitals all around the country. How does the Tweed compare to other services and facilities?
Well, the Tweed's doing a great job under incredibly difficult circumstances. It just doesn't have the funding to be able to provide the range of services and care for this community that a hospital that's servicing a similar number of people would have. So given what they've got, they do a great job, but they shouldn't be forced to ration healthcare for people in this community who need it because we haven't got Labor or Liberal governments who are prepared to make the sort of commitment that this hospital needs.
Dawn, you were saying that you felt particularly touched by what you heard this morning from the doctors. What did they say to you?
Well, I just feel very concerned that our health professionals and specialists that are there to look after our community need to take time away from that role to come and try and advocate for some decent funding of the hospitals. That's not what they should be doing, and I feel really disappointed about that and very concerned for our community that these people are needing to do that rather than looking after us all. So I'm very now determined that we're able to find some funding for the hospital so that they can go on to service our growing community and our ageing community. This is not an area that needs a hospital that's been run down. It needs a hospital that's growing and is vibrant and is able to meet the needs of our community, and that's what we're determined to do.